everyone, welcome to our video tutorial for this pumpkin cat hat that you can see Melba modelling here. So I hope you enjoy it. Please like, share and subscribe and we hope to catch you soon. That's it. She's off. Okay, so to make this pumpkin hat you'll need some pumpkin-y colours. So I've got this orange that you can see for the main hat, the orangey brown for the stem, and this dark green for the leaves. So these are all about a 2 to 3 weight and acrylic wool blends. You can use pretty much any yarn you like. You could use cotton, you could, I would just have it on the finer side. A chunky yarn won't work really well for this pattern. Then you'll need obviously some crochet hooks that correspond to your yarns, but I'm going to use a 2.5 millimeter, which is slightly smaller than what my yarns recommend for this part here, this stem and leaf part, just because you want those to be a little bit more sort of tight weave. Okay, so we stuff this stem and you don't want the stitches to be far apart so you can see the stuffing inside. So I would use a slightly smaller hook than what your, it's got Melba's hair on it already, a slightly smaller hook than what your yarn recommends for this part here. And then I'm going to use a 4 millimeter crochet hook for this main part of the hat here. Just, it's probably better to use one that's just on the slightly larger end of what you want for your yarn or what your yarn recommends, just to give you a better fit for the hat part. Now, as mentioned, you'll need some stuffing for the stem, and I'm using just some cotton wool, but you could use, some yarn scraps, you could use some fabric scraps, a toy filler, anything that you've got that you can just stuff this little stem. And you obviously only need a little bit, it's just a tiny stem there. Well, it's a large stem in proportion, but it's just a small amount of stuffing that you need. Then you'll need some darning needles. Now I've got 2 different needles here I'm going to use. I'm going to use this one for weaving in my ends, but you'll also need one to sew your pieces together. So we're going to make the leaves first, then we'll make the stem, and we'll sew the leaves to the stem, and then we'll make the hat, and we'll sew the stem and leaves to the hat. So I'm going to use a slightly finer needle to do all that sewing. You'll need you may or may not need a stitch marker. It can just be helpful for when you're working in the rounds with the stem. And then you might need a pin or 2. I've just got a sewing pin here, a pin or 2 that you can use to, while you're sewing the stem and the leaves to the hat, you can just pin it in place. So that might be useful too. Oh, and of course you'll need some scissors to snip off your ends. Okay, so the stitches and techniques that you'll need to know to make this hat are all beginner friendly. As mentioned before, we're going to make this in 4 pieces if you count the 2 leaves. 5 pieces. No, 4 pieces if you count the 2 leaves. So we're going to make these 2 leaves and the stem, and then the hat piece, and as I said, we'll sew them all together. So the techniques that you'll need to know are how to make a slip knot onto your hook, how to create a chain, how to single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, how to make a magic ring, and then you'll need to know how to sew pieces together, which, just basic sewing techniques, how to weave in your ends. And I didn't mention for the leaves you'll need to know how to make this little picot that gives a little point to the leaves. But I'll run through that with you. That's super easy, and I'll run through that with you. So I think that's pretty much it. All beginner friendly techniques. And oh, did I mention slip stitch? Yeah, we're just going to use slip stitch to make these ties. So let's get started. Okay, so take your leaf colour and leave a slightly longer tail than you normally would, because we'll use that to sew on this leaf to the stem. Now you only need to do that with the first leaf, okay? You don't need the longer tail for the second leaf. But slip knot onto your hook, however you do that. And then we're going to chain 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Okay, so we've got 10 chains, and you'll notice on your chain, as always, you've got that top loop of the V and the bottom loop of the V. Okay, so we're going to work into that top loop to start with. So with these leaves, we're working up one side and down the other side of the chain. So just make sure that you're only working for this first half, that you're only working into that top chain or top part of the chain. So in that second chain from the hook, so skip the first chain, in the second chain work a single crochet. In the next 2 chains, work a half double crochet. And just a reminder, I don't go through these basic stitches in any great detail, so if you need any brushing up, then please check out another YouTube video or whatever resource you've got to remind you of the stitches. Now, in the next 3 stitches, or next 3 chains, we're putting 1 double crochet, so that's 1 and 2 and 3. In the next 2 chains, half double crochet. And then in that final chain, a single crochet. So that's the first half of our leaf done. Now we're going to turn this around and we're going to work down the other side of this chain. So find that first chain. Now this can be a little bit tricky. Just locate your slip knot and then make sure that you get that second loop of the chain and put a single crochet in that first one there, or last one, however you look at it. Then we're just going to mirror exactly what we did on the other side. So a half double crochet in that first, or that second chain really, half double crochet in the next 2 chains anyway, double crochet in the next 3 chains, 1 and 2 and 3, and then of course mirroring the other side, we've got half double crochets in the next 2 chains. It's 1 and 2, and then in that last chain you've got a single crochet. So that's the first round of your leaf. Okay, and now we're going to continue for a second round, and in this first stitch here, single crochet, so you don't need to slip stitch, just single crochet. In the next stitch we're going to half double crochet twice, so that's that one there, half double crochet into that next stitch twice, so I'm going back in there now, second one. In the next stitch, 1 half double crochet. In the next stitch, 2 double crochets. So we just have to add a few increases in here to get our leaf shape. Next stitch, 1 double crochet. Next stitch, 2 double crochets. Next stitch, 1 half double crochet. Next stitch, 2 half double crochets. And then in that last stitch, a single crochet in that last stitch. So now we're going to create the little picot, but first move across to the next stitch and single crochet, and then chain 2, and locate at the base here. You'll have these 2 loops, and it might be a little bit harder to see with this darker yarn, but you've got 2 loops, and you're just going to slip stitch through those 2 loops and then through the loop on your hook. to create the picot. Okay, and then we're moving along to mirror the previous side. So we're half double crochet twice into that next stitch, half double crochet into the next, just one half double crochet, 2 double crochets in the next, 1 and 2, 1 double crochet in the next, 2 double crochets in the next, 1 and 2, 1 half double crochet in the next, and then 2 half double crochets in the next. So just a completely symmetrical leaf, and then finishing off with your single crochet into the last stitch. And then you're just going to slip stitch into the first stitch from the previous round, and you've got your leaf. Oops, slip stitch into that first stitch, and there you've got your first leaf. Now what we're going to do here, so you've got your longer tail on the other end, just yarn over and pull through and leave a little bit of a tail there. Just snip off the end. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to, so it's only on one leaf that you need to leave this extra long tail that you're going to sew onto the stem with. But what we're going to do with each of these tail ends, take your darning needle, and this just adds a little bit more structure to the leaf. So take this tail end that you finished with and thread your needle. And then come into the back of your leaf here, and you're just going to weave through this end. So this doubles as weaving in your end and also adding a little bit of structure to the leaf. So weave down the center of the leaf, just in those loops that you can see at the back. Try not to run it too far through, and I've got it too far through there. Try not to run it too far through to the front. You don't really want to see this on the front, so actually I'm just going to go a little bit more slowly. So you don't really want to see it on the front if you can avoid it. So let's just see. Oh yeah, that's fine. So this, like I said, it's just going to give that little bit of extra kind of ability of your leaf to stand up. So weave it all the way through this first tail, weave it all the way through to the far end. Let it come out the top. So it's coming out right up the top there, and then you'll just snip off the excess from that tail. And then what you'll do with your first tail, so the longer tail, on this first leaf, well, on both leaves you'll do a similar sort of thing, but you just want this longer tail so you've got enough to both weave it down the center and also sew in your end. Oops, split yarn again. So you're just going to weave this first tail down the center as well. Now on this first leaf it'll be a longer tail when you get to the end, and you won't snip it off. So let's just do this together. So just start to weave down the center of the leaf again, doing the same, trying not to get it too far into the front. So just pull that through, weaving down. And let it come out right at the base of the leaf. Okay, so right at the base there. So that's your first leaf. And for this first leaf, don't cut that tail. And for the second leaf, you can just go ahead and cut that tail, okay, once you've woven it through. So make a second leaf using the same technique as this leaf. So this one, just a reminder, you don't need to leave that long tail for the second one, okay, but still weave both through and then cut off the excess. So I'll see you once I've made my second leaf, and we'll continue on to make the stem. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly run through this picot again because I have a suspicion I might have skipped over it quite quickly in the last leaf. So you've put your single crochet in that last stitch on this side, then you'll put your single crochet in the first stitch on the other side, and then you'll chain 2, insert your hook into those 2 loops at the base of your chain, yarn over, pull through for a slip stitch. So pull through the 2 loops and then the loop on your hook. And then you'll just move on to the half double crochets into that next stitch on this side. So we've got 2 half double crochets, and then you'll just continue on as for the first leaf. Okay, so there I've got my 2 leaves, and they always come out looking slightly different, which is kind of cool because no 2 leaves are the same. So there's the 2 leaves, and we're going to move on to making this stem. Okay, so take your stem colour and your smaller hook, and hopefully, I forgot to mention at the beginning of making the leaves, is that the leaves and the stem are the smaller hook, so hopefully you took note of that with the leaves. But take your smaller hook. We're going to make a magic ring. So the way I do that is I start it as a slip knot, and then I double back and make a magic ring. So if you don't know how to do that, check out a YouTube video. I don't run through it super slowly. So you've got your magic ring. And then we're going to put 10 single crochets into the ring. Okay, so just chain 1 just to give yourself a little bit of height, and then 10 single crochets working into your ring. So that's 1 and 2, 3. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that off camera. So I've got 4 in there now. So you finish off putting your 10 single crochets into your ring, and I'll join you shortly. Okay, so we have 10 single crochets into the ring, and then you're just going to close your ring by pulling on the tail. So close that up nice and tightly. And we're going to slip stitch to that first stitch to join the round. So ignore the chain and just slip stitch into the first stitch to join that round, and then you might need to just pull a couple of times on your tail to close that ring. So now we're going to work, it depends on how long you want to make your stem, but we're going to work in rounds of single crochet. So chain 1, and then just place a single crochet in each stitch, so just 1 single crochet in each stitch all the way around, and you're going to do that for as many rounds as you want to make your stem as tall or as short as you want it to be. So perhaps I can give you an idea of how high or how many rounds I went for my last stem. I think from memory this was about 12 or 13 rounds. So anywhere sort of from 10 to 15 is going to be fine. Now let me just get my tape measure and I'll give you an idea of how tall that is. Okay, so to give you an idea, this is about 4 centimeters tall. So you can make it shorter or taller, whatever you prefer. So about 4 centimeters there. So just continue around. So each round is just 1 single crochet in each stitch. Slip stitch to join your round. slip stitch to join your round. When you get there, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, that's the slip stitch. Sorry, that's the chain. And then slip stitch to join. And here's where you might want your stitch marker. It might help you to... Oh yeah. Sorry. I thought I'd broken my yarn for a moment, but I just pulled the tail, and it's good. So you're just going to continue around, chain 1, placing 1 single crochet in each stitch all the way around for however many rounds you want to go. And I'm probably going to go for a similar number as what I went for before, which was, I think, from memory, 12. So anywhere 10 to 15, that sort of range. And I'll meet you once I've done as many rounds as I want to do, and you do the same. So as you work your rounds, you'll start to see that it will fold over into this tube shape. And actually, just what I was saying before is that you might find your stitch marker useful here to mark where you need to slip stitch, but just 1 single crochet in each stitch. So keep on going, and I'll meet you shortly. Okay, just to mention, when you're working in the round in this small work like this, it can be easy to kind of lose a stitch. So just what I would recommend that you do is just make sure that you're counting each stitch as you work around, and make sure you're not losing any along the way. So and just, use the stitch marker if you need to. Okay, so I've got my stem to where I want it to be, and I perhaps should have mentioned this at the beginning, but just insert your hook into the top of that ring, and you want to pull through your tail. If it's not on the outside already, you just want to pull that tail through. So just get it onto your hook and pull it through the top, because we're just going to use that to sew close the top of the stem. Okay, so I've got my stem there. Get a stray piece of fluff or something on there, whatever that is. Let's just snip that off. Okay, so now we're just going to make this little disc area. So for this first round, just chain 1, and this is where again your stitch marker might come in handy. And I'm actually going to use mine. Where is it? There it is. I'm going to use mine, and I'll just put it into that last stitch, just so I know where the end of my round is. So we've chained 1, and you're just going to put 2 single crochets in each stitch, just to increase this out. So that will give you at the end of this round 20 stitches. So go ahead and place 2 single crochets in each stitch all the way around, and I'll meet you once I get back to my stitch marker. Okay, so I'm just round at my stitch marker here. I'll just take that out and then place my 2 single crochets in that last stitch. So you'll be able to see that it's starting just to flare out at the base there. And then just slip stitch to your first stitch to join, just as you've been doing. Mark your last stitch if you feel like you need to. And we're just going to continue around, and we're going to increase this base. So in the first stitch, place 1 single crochet. So it's just a classic increase in the round. In the next stitch, 2 single crochets. Oh, squeaky yarn. In the next stitch, 1 single crochet. In the next stitch, 2 single crochets. So you'll just continue that pattern all the way around until you get to your stitch marker, and I'll see you there. So it's 1, 2, 1, 2, and I'll see you back here. Okay, so I'm just in my last 2 stitches here, so a single crochet, remove my stitch marker, and then 2 single crochets in that last stitch. And then we've got one more increase round, so I'll just finish this one off with a slip stitch as before. Oh, was that my right? Oh no, there's my chain there, sorry, I have to get that there. Okay, so we've got one final increase round to do, and this time it's going to be, if you're familiar with the classic increasing, you'll chain your one, and in the first two stitches just one single crochet, one and one, and then in the third stitch along two. So that will be the pattern for this final increase round. So 1 1 2. So 1 1 and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch. So go ahead and finish off that final increase round, and I'll once again meet you back around here, which I will mark while I can still see it clearly, and I'll see you back around at this end here. Okay, so I've done my last increase round on the stem, and now just to make this sit a little bit flatter, we're just going to do one round of single crochet. So just one single crochet in each stitch all the way around, and this will be our final round for the stem. So just put one single crochet in each stitch all the way around until you get to here, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so I'm just placing my last single crochet in this final round and slip stitch, and then yarn over and pull through. Now leave a good amount of tail, because we're going to use that to sew the base onto the actual hat. So leave maybe 30 centimeters or so, however much you think you're going to need to sew that on. And that's our little base and stem. Now take your darning needle, and you're just going to sew across the top of the stem, just to make sure that the hole stays nice and closed. So what I do is I just go in and across to the other side. So just be careful you're not pulling it too tight. You don't want to misshape it too much, and I actually have pulled it just a little bit too tight there, so I'll just pull that out. And then just sew back across. Just wrangle that through. And once again, not too tight. And I'll go through a third time. And then what I do is I just poke the tail back down the center, pull that through, and that's just going to get tucked in with my stuffing. So I'll just stuff that in. And then take a little bit of your stuffing, whatever you're using. So I've got my little cotton wool here. You're not going to need too much. And now I just stuff it with using my crochet hook. Just stuff it in. So you don't want it overstuffed. Like I said at the beginning, you don't want to be able to see the stuffing through your work. And that's partly, well, it is why we use partly why, let's say, Well, we use a smaller hook size. It's a bit too much now. Let's just stuff that in, so that's looking pretty good. And then you can just bend the stem a little bit so you get that nice little bend, and I might just put a tiny bit more in there in the base. Perfect. So just bend it where you want it to bend to, and that is your stem. Now we're going to sew the leaves onto the stem. So you can sort of work out how you want this to be. So what I tend to do is I put the one with the long tail on the top, and I'm just going to thread my needle. And I'll go through, so let's just move that out of the way for a moment. So I'm just going to take my tail through both, so I'm going to sew through both of the leaves. And I just go back and forward a couple of times. So just start to arrange them how you want them to sit. So I'm going to go back and forward a couple of times, just to make sure it's nice and secure. Get that needle through, there we go. So I think that's sitting how I want it to sit. So I'll just go through one more time. And then back through to the other side, so I can be on the underside for sewing in on my leaves to my stem. Okay, so just work out where you want them to be. I probably want them to be on the other side, so it's bent towards this side, so I think I'm going to put them on the other side. And there's no rules about this, you can just do them however you want. And then I'm just pushing through to the bottom of the stem. I'm just going to go backwards and forwards a few times to attach those two together. It's just super simple sewing techniques. Back through. Through there. How's that looking? I think just maybe another couple of times through there. Sorry that if I'm working off camera a little bit. There you go. And one more time. Okay, and then I'm going to just make sure that my yarn is through on the leaf side, so I can then weave in the rest of this tail end into the back here of the leaf. Right in the back here. So yeah, just weave your tail end into the back of one of your leaves. Once again, just make sure you're not going through to the front if you can avoid it. And I'll go back down there. That will make that nice and secure. And there are our leaves attached to our stem, and I'll just snip off that excess. And there is our top part, and I've got little bits of cotton wool on it, but let's say those will come off pretty easily. So there's your stem and your leaves. So we're going to move on to making the main part of the hat now. So take your pumpkin colour and make a magic ring once again. Now you're using your larger size hook for this hat part. Now just before we move on, so you've got your magic ring, but just before we move on, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the sizing of the hat. So this basic hat is the same basic pattern as my Narby pom-pom cat hat. So if you want to make a size other than large, then go to that tutorial and check out the sizing there. So I'm just going to demonstrate this large pattern today for this size, and you know there's a couple of reasons for that. Just because it's simple, I'll just demonstrate one size here. Secondly, this is the size that it's the large size, and it suits Melba really well because it's not too tight on her head. And Melba is, you know, she's not a large cat. She's just sort of an average domestic short hair size. And this larger size is you know, it's not tight on her head, so she will tolerate it for, you know, the few minutes that I want to take a cute picture. For most cats, the larger size is probably going to be where it's at. So that's why I'm demonstrating the large today. And like I said, if you want other sizes, please head over to that other tutorial, and I'll put a link to that on the video. So yes, I'm going to make the large. Now also it will depend on exactly what yarn you're using and exactly what hook size you're using. So you can vary the sizing a little bit using different sized hook and different sized yarn. So I'm going to demonstrate to you just this one size of hat today. So you've got your magic ring and your chain 1. Now single crochet 14 into your magic ring. So 14 single crochets into your magic ring. And you go ahead and finish that off, and I will do the same, and I'll meet you shortly. Okay, so I've got my 14 in my magic ring there, and I'm just going to close up that ring by pulling on the tail, just as we did for the stem. So you've got to pull pretty firmly, but obviously don't pull enough so you'll break your yarn. Okay, so we've got that closed, and then slip stitch to join. So you've got your 14 single crochets into your magic ring. Now chain 2, and this time we're going to place 2 double crochets in each stitch around in the ring. So 2 double crochets in each of your single crochets from the previous row. And I'll meet you once I'm around at the end of this round 2. Okay, so you should have 28 double crochets in your round now. So slip stitch to join. Now, I know that for those of you who are familiar with patterns, usually we wouldn't do this single crochet and then this double crochet, because it kind of misshapes it a bit, misshapes the ring. Obviously the double crochet stitches are bigger. But why I do that is to get this kind of fit for the hat. So it loosens up around the ears, and the main reason why your cat will hate wearing a hat is if you're interfering with the ears. I mean, some cats just won't tolerate anything on their head either, but you want to make this really nice big space for the ears. And then the other part of this pattern is it doesn't sit flat. It sits up, so it gives plenty of space for the ears. Okay, so this is why this pattern is designed this way. It's slightly different to what we would normally do with increasing in the round. So chain 2, and now we're going to do another increase round. So in that first stitch, place a single double crochet or 1 double crochet. The next stitch, place 2. double crochets. So we're just increasing in a similar way to what we did in the base of the stem. 1 double crochet and then 2 double crochets. Okay, so you'll just continue around your work with that pattern. So 1 double crochet and then 2 double crochets in the next stitch. So continue around in round 3, repeating that pattern, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so you can see now that I'm really starting to get that kind of buckled shape, and it's on purpose, so don't think that you've done anything wrong if that's what's happening to your work as well. That it's kind of done on purpose. Well, it is done on purpose, so you get this kind of this lift on the sides that helps to accommodate room for the ears. So I'm just finishing up this round here, and then we're going to move on to round 4. Okay, so now we've got this shape here. We're going to continue on to row 4, and this is going to be a single crochet round. So place a single crochet in that first stitch, another single crochet in the next stitch, and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch. So we're continuing the increasing pattern, but for this round we're just using single crochets, and I'll show you. So this here on this hat, so we've done to here, and we're just doing this single crochet around here that is the edge of the ear hole. Okay, so continue around with those. So where am I at? 1 1 2 1 1 and 2. So 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets in that next stitch along. So continue with that same pattern, 1 1 and 2, until you get around to the other side, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so now we're moving on to round 5. So chain 2, and then in those first 2 stitches just place a double crochet, and then to create the ear holes we're going to chain 20 to 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 and 20, and we're going to skip 14. So 1 2 3 4 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14, and then in that 15th stitch place a double crochet, and just because this is just the sides, just make sure that that double crochet is nice and tight. And then we're going to place a double crochet in the next 10 stitches. 3. So go ahead, I'm on my 3rd there. Go ahead and place a double crochet in the next, so from the ear hole, next 10 stitches, and I'll meet you once I've done mine. And then we're just going to create the second ear hole in the same way. So chain your 20, skip 14, and then double crochet into your 15th stitch. Okay, so I've got my second ear hole there, and then just double crochet the rest of the way around to the end of this round. So I'm going to do the same, and actually just to show you here, so this bit is narrower, it's the front of the hat, and this bit is a bit wider after the ear holes, so that's the back of the hat. So go ahead and finish off your double crochets, and I'll meet you at the end of this round. Okay, so I'm just slip stitching to my first stitch there to join. So we've got our ear holes done, and we'll move on to round 6. Okay, round 6 we chain 2, and then we're just going to double crochet 1 in each stitch or chain, depending on where you're at, all the way around. Oops, my yarn's splitting a little bit here. Get into that stitch. There we go. So one double crochet in each stitch or chain around. Now you could work into the chain space if you wanted to, just the same number of stitches as chains, but I'm going to actually put my stitches actually into the chains. So you can choose there whether you want to work into the actual chains or into the chain space. And then you'll just place 1 double crochet in each chain or stitch all the way around to end up round 6. And actually I'll just mention here that when I'm working into these chains, I'm working into actually 2 loops. Just so for me it just looks a little bit neater. So when you've got a total of 3 loops in each chain, so I'm actually working into that top part of the V plus that 3rd loop, and that sits at the back there, so just leaves the 1 loop that works around the edge of the ear hole. So that's just what I do. You don't have to, you don't have to do that if you don't want to, but 1 double crochet in each chain, then in each stitch, and once again I'll see you at the end of the round. Okay, so my last couple of stitches are just going into this round. So last one there, slip stitch to join, and that's the end of that round. Now we've just got 1 round to go, and it's a single crochet round, and it's where we add on the ties as well. So you'll need to just check where you want to add the ties. Now, just to give you an idea, what I tend to do is I just sit my hat in, in the way that it's going to be. Let's just work on the one that I'm working on. So where the hat, how the hat's going to sit, and then what I tend to do is I just put them just forward of that halfway mark. Okay, you could put a stitch marker in to mark them, but if you've got your hat sitting flat, this is the front facing you, then just put them just to the inner side of halfway. Okay, 1 here, 1 here. If you want to try this on your cat at this point and just adjust that placement a little bit, then go for it. Feel free to do that as well. So chain 1, and this is going to be just a single crochet round to both finish off this bottom edge, but also add those ties. So go ahead and place 1 single crochet in each stitch until you get to the point where you want to add your first tie. So I'll do that and I'll meet you at that first tie point. Okay, so you can see I'm just forward of halfway here. Just forward. There's my halfway, and I'm just forward of that. So I'm going to start my tie here. So you'll just go ahead and chain to the length that you want for your ties. Now count your chains so you know how many to do for the next one. But what I tend to do, and it'll depend on your yarn and your hook, but I do about 45 to 50 chains to get a length that will tie under the neck. So just to give you an idea how much that works out to be in this yarn that I'm using, and yours will be different, but just to give you an idea of the length of my ties, they come out about 20 centimeters. So if you want longer ties or shorter ties, then that's also fine too. So you go ahead and chain to the length that you want your ties to be. Okay, so I've done 50 chains there, and just a reminder, don't measure this measurement because it will actually be a bit shorter once you've finished off your slip stitches, which is what we're going to do down this line. So just chain 1 as a turning chain, and then slip stitch down your chain to create your ties. And then the finished ties work out to be about 20 centimeters with this amount of chaining for me. Okay, so just slip stitch all the way down, and I'll meet you once I've finished doing that. Okay, so slip stitch down the length of my chain and back into that same stitch as you started this chain at. Place a single crochet. So at the base of the ties there's 2 single crochets, and then just continue on to the other side and create your second tie in exactly the same way as you've created your first. So you'll just be putting that just to the inner side of center here. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you at the end of this 7th and final round. Okay, so I'm just placing my last 2 single crochets in this final round, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join and then yarn over and pull through. And that's probably a bit excessive as a tail. I do tend to leave more tail than I need, but I'd rather that way than the other way. But let's just snip that off there. And now we've got a few tails to weave in before we sew our little cap onto our hat. So I'm going to go ahead and weave in my tail ends here. So with this one at the top, you can sew across the underside of the magic ring if you want to, just to make sure that that doesn't come undone. And it doesn't matter too much how it looks, but because you're going to be sewing over the top of this top part here with the stalk and leaves. So I'm just going to go ahead and weave in all these tail ends, and you do the same. So just this one here, if you want to sew across, then it's not a bad idea to do that. Across there, and then I'll just do one more. So go ahead, Leah, like I said, weave in your tail ends, and I will see you once I've done that, and we'll sew on the little top part together. Actually, I'm just showing you here on this end that's at the base of the hat. If you want to, actually I'll do it this way. If you want to disguise this little area where you've finished, you can do this little trick of an invisible stitch. So you just place your hook through that stitch there on the other side of your finish point, and then you can just go, so you're actually sewing a stitch, so you just go down into the center of that last stitch. You don't have to bother to do that though. It just kind of disguises the finish a little bit. And then I'll weave this one down as well. So yes, I'll finish off. I just wanted to show you that little trick if you wanted to do that. And I'll finish off and I'll see you shortly. Okay, so now we will sew on all that's left. Sew on this cap onto the top of the hat. So this is where you might want to pin to kind of pin it in place. So work out how you want it to sit. I like having the leaves at the side and then the stalk bending over. So I'm just going to put, so my tail is here, so I'm just going to put a little pin at the front here just to hold that in place. You want to be careful, of course, not to sew your bits together. So, as in sew the hat closed. But take your yarn, and you can use a smaller needle here. I think I'll use a smaller one just to make this really nice and neat. If I can get, yeah, I can get that through. So, oh, I think so. Let's see if we can get that through. Oops, no. Okay, we're done. Okay, so just with that pen holding it in the front, you still just want to kind of line it up nice and neatly. Make sure you've got it in the center. And then it's just a matter of sewing. So just underneath where that disc is going to sit, and come up into a stitch. Hopefully it's not going to be too small, this needle. I think it's good. Just got to get that through. There we go. So you're just going to work your way slowly around. What I tend to do is I go through most of the stitches. So work one sewing stitch into each of the stitches in the round. And just keep checking that you've got it centered as you move around. So go ahead and you finish that off. This might be a bit too far out. And just make sure you're sewing it nice and neatly, because obviously this part will be visible. And I'll see you once I've finished putting mine on. There we go. Pull that through. So you can just see, I'll just show you. Yeah, so you can see you can't see the stitching. It's nice and neat. So you finish off and I'll see you once I've done the same. So there is your finished, once you've woven in your end. So what I have done is I've just woven in the end of the after sewing on the disc, I've just woven that into the back there. So yeah, well done. You've got your pumpkin hat. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. It's obviously just heaps of fun as an autumn project, or you can use this as a Halloween costume. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please remember to like, share and subscribe. And we would love to see your photos of your cat wearing his or her hat. So please send those along to catventurous.community@gmail.com, or you can tag us on social media at catventurous.crochet. So thanks very much for being here once again, and hope to catch you soon. Thanks. Bye.